Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Business Essentials podcast. I'm your host, Veronica, and today we're going to be speaking with Rosemary Clark. She's here to talk to us about how to love your parenting, to teach us how to set boundaries and be ourselves. If you want to learn how to set your boundaries and grow your business by being your true, authentic self, stick around, and I'll be right back right after this.
Tony Robbins once said, "No matter how many mistakes you make or how slow you progress, you are still way ahead of everyone who isn't trying." This is the Biz Essentials. You want to grow, get ahead, keep the spark. Here you'll get valuable insights and empowerment to grow personally and professionally. Isn't it about time you turn your dreams into successful passion projects? Learn how to be productive, be successful, be joyful, and more importantly, be yourself. The Be Essentials. This is the Biz Essentials. And this is your host, Veronica of Veronica Ventures.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Rosemary Clark. You're here to talk to us about parenting, boundaries, and how to make that work for us in business. Why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rosemary Clark, and I'm married to my best friend, Steve, and we live in Nova Scotia with our two kids. And, I've had a lot of different kind of careers in my life. I started out as an entrepreneur at the age of 14. I needed a job to start saving money for university. So I started like a summer day camp, and because I really liked kids, and I still love kids. Recently been running a retail shop for the past 10 years with my husband, and now doing something that I really, really love, that I feel like I can really sink my teeth into. Because not only does it help me, I feel, help others, but it also helped me help myself, become the mom I wanted to be, become the parent that I wanted to be, because I didn't have a good parenting modeled for me in childhood. I actually had quite an abusive childhood, and wanted to make sure I didn't pass those things on to my kids. And I thought making the decision was all I needed to do. Just make the decision, I'm going to be different. And when the rubber hit the road and I had 2 under 2 and the yelling started, I knew I needed tools. And will be forever grateful that I stumbled on those tools from a parenting model called language of listening. And then it just extended into other parts of my life, and really, really helping me show up as who I am in the world and hold boundaries in all aspects of my life, not just in parenting.
Wow. Yeah. And that's exactly why I'm like, you have to be on my show because I need you in my life. I too had a traumatic childhood. So it's really, really hard to set boundaries when you've never had any and never been allowed to have any.
Yes.
And I think it's not just those of us with traumatic childhoods. It's anybody who's never had that modeled to us or was kind of told not to have them, because you're supposed to do for others. At least that's how I was brought up.
You got it.
You put others first. You can't be selfish, even though a lot of the things that are required for boundaries is not about being selfish. It's about making sure that you are yourself and are safe here so that then you can be there for them. So I am fascinated on how you do this. You mentioned the name of a parenting model, and I didn't quite catch it, but tell us a little bit more about what that's like.
Yeah, so the model is called language of listening. It was created by a lady who I think is a pure genius when it comes to figuring out how people work. Her name is Sandy Blackard. And when her kids were young, she encountered some issues too. And she was like, what am I going to do? And so she started looking for answers. And she ended up working with Dr. Gary Landreth, who is very well known in the play therapy world. And she was able to come up with a parenting model. She took everything and distilled it down, and she took from 3 areas. She took from play therapy and also from transformational coaching and positive psychology. She put all those 3 things together, distilled it down into this really simple parenting model that she realized it's not just a coaching model for kids, because this is what she says. We basically become a life coach for our kids. We get them through life. And, not only do the tools work with kids, you use them on yourself. And I use them with my coaching clients, and I use them at my retail shop with my customers there. I use them with my husband. My marriage is better because of this parenting model. And the very, basic foundation of it is just that, like, kids are great. Kids are amazing. Kids have all kinds of strengths. And it's our job as their parents to coach those strengths out of them, to show them, and reflect back to them, who they are, because children do make decisions based on their self-belief. We all do. We make decisions based on our self-belief. And I'll probably get into this later, but the way that parenting has been done for generations has really created children and then adults where we're making decisions based on fear. We're making decisions based on trying to prevent bad things from happening. And I think we all know that we don't always make the best decisions when they're based on fear. Much better when they can be based on self-trust and self-belief.
Wow, so much to unpack there. Can you come parent my children? Because I think you'd be better at it than I am. No, seriously, that's fascinating to me, the way you said about being a life coach for your kids. Because I know for me, like, this is one of the things that I'm both grateful for and kind of about COVID, because I really got to know my kids when they were home all the time. And I struggle a lot with parenting because I have control issues. And so it's like, even before COVID, I felt like I was always like, I have to keep hold of everything and everyone, or the whole family's going to fall apart if I don't keep track of everything. And so I'm pissed off because nobody's doing what they said they were going to do. And so it was just like a lot of anger and frustration on everybody's part. And I can see what you're saying about that kind of dampening their own spirit and them not learning to trust themselves, because it's just been in the last couple of months that I finally was like, okay, I can't control what it is they say or do. I can only guide them. And that breakthrough moment, right? But but it's really hard to do and say that when you feel like you are responsible for their well-being and their success in life. So it kind of reflects on you. It's a very weird kind of thing, because it's about wanting them to be successful, but it's also about like, okay, I'm a good mom because they're successful. And so learning to be a life coach, I think all of us, at least us adults, we understand that realm, because I don't know any adult that hasn't read like a self-help book or watched a Tony Robbins talk or something like that. So we all understand what that kind of coaching is like. You teach them and they like, okay, now you take it and be with it. And I think that would be fantastic if we could raise our kids like that. Can you give us a few tips on how to do that? Because
Sure. Well, I can talk to you about the model, Veronica, because it's just 3 simple steps.
that would be great.
It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. When I talk about the model, I talk about the premises, the new beliefs that come with it, and then there's these tools. And the tools for me, they really allowed the beliefs to sink in, to create new mental pathways, which became my default, instead of yelling becoming my default, or again, parenting from a place trying to prevent bad things from happening, and instead parenting from this other place. So, I mean, basically when we come at the model, we very much recognize that, or get in touch with our likes and our dislikes. They seem so simple to talk about likes and dislikes, but they're actually super foundational, because our likes and our dislikes are actually our boundaries. And we gave up our connection to our likes and our dislikes in our childhood. And so that's why holding boundaries is so difficult, because we're not really sure, is this boundary okay? And a lot of times we try to figure out if our boundary is okay if the other person complies, if the other person agrees. And if they don't, we're like, oh, my boundary must not be okay. And we give it up and all this crazy stuff happens, right? So what we want to do is we want to come at first, when you see your child doing something, either that you like or you dislike. And let's talk about the dislike piece of it first, because that's the one that everybody's interested in. How do I hold boundaries with my kids? So what we see in the parenting world right now is we'll see either parents that do feel like they need a lot of control, or they need to be the one in charge, because it doesn't work if you're not the one in charge. Or the pendulum swings to the other side, where we're like best friends with our kids and we want to really acknowledge their emotions and be very emotionally sensitive. And both sides cause issues. So what we want to do is have this beautiful middle ground. And that's what language of listening really provides. So the first premise of language of listening says, everything children do and say is communication, and they must continue to communicate until they are heard. That means when your child is doing something, it's not always about the thing they're doing. There's this underlying communication. And that underlying communication very basically is about a need that they're meeting. And it's probably difficult for them to meet their need. Or if you don't like what they're doing, it's clearly difficult for them to meet that need within your boundaries. And that's what you're laying out for them. You're laying out for them what the boundaries are. You've got this box that you create for them with your boundaries, and they can have lots of fun inside that box. And that's the whole point. And when they're inside that box, they experience all kinds of wonderful strengths: self-control, being able to follow the rules, making choices that are socially beneficial, that are beneficial for themselves. So everything children are doing and saying is communication. And so the first tool we have is called Say What You See. And you literally just reflect back to the child anything you see them doing or saying, thinking or feeling, so that you can understand them. Because when we understand our children, when we really understand where they're coming from, why they're doing what they're doing, that's what we want to do, is get to that place where we go, oh, of course he hit his brother. I get it. And you still don't have to like it. You don't have to be okay with it, right? So when you can really understand them, when you can reflect back to them what you see them saying, doing, thinking, or feeling, and you really understand them, you're going to treat them differently. It's like extending a hand to them. And it could just be simply like, you want to turn with the car, you're feeling frustrated, you hit your brother. That's it.
Right.
Just whatever you see, whatever's happening, right? And what that does is it creates this environment for the child to know that they're okay, just as they are. Just who they are is okay, and how they're feeling is okay. And when any human being knows that who they are and how they're feeling is okay, they automatically become a problem solver. They automatically become a problem solver, which is amazing. Because if we think that who we are is the problem or our emotions are the problem, we get stuck there. I always say people can't be problems, they can only have problems. But if we believe we're the problem, we're stuck trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And the real problem is right there, not being able to solve it. So a lot of times, if a parent sees their child hit a sibling or something, they'll send them to timeout or they'll punish them or something like that. It doesn't actually teach the kid what to do next time they feel like hitting somebody. We need to
Right.
build new mental pathways. Here's what you can do, right? And so can do is the next tool that we use when we see behavior we don't like, the can do's. The premise that goes with that is that all behaviors are driven by three healthy needs: experience, connection, or power. And those are all needs for growth. And everything that children are doing is already meeting those. It's not our job to meet the needs for growth for our kids. They're already doing it. It's our job to tell them what the boundaries are, make them the boundaries really clear, so that box is really clear, so that they can meet those three needs within the boundaries. And what that premise tells us, that all behaviors are driven by three healthy needs, is that we can always trust the intentions. Doesn't mean all behaviors a behavior you like, but it's always coming from a place, a real, like a legit okay place of they're just trying to meet a need. It's what human beings do. We meet needs and we can't stop meeting our needs. They just got to get met. And so we have this tool called can do. So let's say, your son hits his brother because he wants to turn with the car, right? You hit your brother, you're really frustrated. You want to turn with the car. Must be something you can do to let him know you want to turn without anybody getting hurt. So that phrase includes your boundary: without anybody getting hurt, right? And it's okay
Right.
for your kid to go after what he wants. He's not wrong for trying to get what he wants. It's just that you want him to do it within your boundaries, which is not hitting somebody, which is keeping anybody from getting hurt. And you're inviting the child into problem solving,
Wow.
inviting them in to solve the problem. Yeah, right. It seems kind of simple, but this is a thing. Sandy, again, the founder, she was able to distill all this down to these three tools. And so your last tool, sorry, I should say when it comes up with the can do's, either the child is going to come up with a way, oh, I'll give him the yellow card, see if he wants the yellow card instead of the red one. I'll see if he trades me, or
Hmm.
maybe you come up with a solution, but together you work as a team together to solve, help that child meet that need within your boundaries, because you're the one in charge. And it's a legitimate need that they need help meeting, and you can support them. You can be their life coach to support them to get their needs met, right? But within the boundaries, in ways that are socially and personally beneficial for them. And so then you move into strengths after that. Strengths is the final tool that we use. And this is also the tool that you use when you see behavior you like. So we're assuming that the can do's, we've worked it out, and now you're seeing behavior you like. And in order to get that really solid inside the child, in order to increase their self-belief, which we talked about, that self-trust and that self-belief, we use the strengths tool. So the strengths premise says children have every possible inner strength, and they act according to who they believe they are. So if we can help our child see the strength that shows up when they stay within our boundaries, they're going to start believing that's who they are, and they'll actually start making their decisions based on, I'm a loving person, so I'm going to do the loving thing. I'm a responsible person, I'm going to do the responsible thing, right? So in that moment, when the child, figures out a way to wait for his turn with the car or trade cars with his brother or whatever, you name the strength. And the strengths are really important because it's different than praise. Praise is very different than strengths. Praise gets the child rooted in somebody else's belief of them, somebody else's opinion of them. What we do with the strengths tools, we go back to the say what you see, and we name the thing that the child did that proves the strength that we're pointing out to them. So you found a way to get a turn with the car you wanted without anybody getting hurt. That shows that you are a problem solver. That shows you know how to get along with people. That shows you know how to share. There's so many strengths that could come up there, and the child's brain starts to grow in that manner of having that belief. And sometimes, Veronica, there have been times I've used these tools together with my children, and the first time it changed their behavior. The first time. So like I have a story about a ripped hot dog bun. When my daughter, her hot dog bun got ripped, she got so upset she threw the food all over the room, and I didn't get after her. She left the room screaming. I waited for her to come back, and when she came back, I told her if she picked up all her food off the floor, I'd get her a new hot dog, and I would do my very best to make sure the bun didn't rip, but I couldn't guarantee it. And I just told her what the boundary was. Food is not for the floor, it's for the plate or your tummy, and it still does taste the same. I started with say what you see first and really understanding her. I remember what it was like to be a kid, and your hot dog bun doesn't taste right. I remember
Yeah.
that. So I connected with her first. And, she ate that second hot dog and then she asked for a third. And when she was finished her third hot dog, she said, Mama, this one didn't rip. Well, that's funny. Why didn't she say that after the second one? So I asked her, I said, Emily, did your second hot dog rip? And she said, yeah. So I went into the strike. They said, your hot dog bun ripped and you ate it anyways. That shows you have self-control. She ran across the room, Veronica, and gave me the biggest hug. And from then on, there was never a problem with ripped hot dog buns again. She could handle it. She experienced herself as having someone with self-control. And she loved experiencing herself as someone who has self-control. And we just never had a problem with hot dog buns again.
Wow, you may have just changed my life. I don't know, but I'm like,
Changed my life.
right? Oh my gosh. I love I love all of them, but I love that you start with saying what you see, because it's not just about seeing the environment, you're seeing the person, you're seeing the kid. And so much of kids' behavior is driven by just see me for me.
Yes.
And
that's what everybody wants. You're right. We all just want to be seen and understood. Exactly.
yeah, I think that's hard as adults to recognize if you don't really think about it, think about your inner child, because we see them as an extension of ourselves, really. And so it's really tough to kind of be like, okay, they're their own person with their own feelings. And even though we get that on an intellectual level, I think sometimes when we get caught up in the parenting, like I want to be a great mom. And so it becomes about, for me, it was about control. Some people do the exact opposite and they're like, okay, you do whatever. And then you get spoiled children or children who don't know how to make any decisions because you've made every single one of them for them the whole life. So, wow, I'm going to change my whole parenting tactic. I'm going to try. I'm going to work on it because, issues.
Yeah.
But I can totally see that being beneficial. Now, you mentioned that you've actually used this in your marriage and in your workplace. Can you tell us a little bit about how you implement that with adults?
Yeah, for sure. Because the really beautiful thing about this parenting model is it really is a marriage between the model and you. It's your love for your kids that you bring in, it's your boundaries. And, determining what your boundaries are is a big deal. And that was, that was the big piece for me, I think, is that I did grow up in an environment where I didn't trust myself. And I grew up well, we all grew up in a society where we look at kids, we have a lot of judgments about kids. And when we see a child doing something bad, our brain automatically goes to the future. Oh my gosh, he just hit his brother. Let's say your son's like 2 or 3, he just hit his brother. He's going to be a bully, or he's going to end up beating his wife, or, all these thoughts come into our head and we think we have to crush this. We have to stop it. Right. And there's us making decisions based on fear, making decisions based on trying to prevent bad things from happening instead of believing in the greatness of the child. And in order to believe in the greatness of the child, sometimes, most of the time, a lot of the time, we have to believe in our own greatness first. And so these tools do work with us. And so as far as using it in my marriage and using it in my retail shop and with the coaching clients I work with, just that whole idea of, first off, saying what you see. When I use say what you see with my husband, he loves it. Now, here's a little trick about say what you see. When you're using it with young kids, they usually eat up when you focus on what they're saying and doing because they live in such a physical world. Teenagers and adults they eat up more the other side, the thinking and the feeling. If you can reflect back to somebody, what they're thinking and feeling, and you can reflect those things back to yourself as well to make sure that you know that you're not the problem. Because how many of us feel like we're the problem? I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I have to change me. And then there's no self-trust available at all. And we can't get to our boundaries. So again, and coming from a difficult childhood and having given up my connection to my preferences, having given up to my connection to putting what I want and what I like and what I dislike first. And there's what you brought up at the beginning there about it's selfish to put yourself first and you always have to put other people first. But in childhood, we start doing that in order to fit in order to feel safe around, our caregivers. We have to set our brain to be more sensitive to other people's boundaries, more sensitive to what other people want. And then we don't really show up in the world because our wants, our likes and our dislikes are all connected to our identity. And it's literally how I reconnected to my identity after a difficult childhood. My training for becoming a language of listening coach was 2 years. And the last third of the second year, all of a sudden we started learning how to use the tools with ourselves. And the first thing that Sandy had us do, which is the first thing that I get all my clients to do, is to sit down, get 20 to 30 minutes on your own and write out a list of everything you can think of that you like and everything that you can think of that you dislike. Because those things are who you are. Your unique mix of likes and dislikes That's your identity. That's who you are. Those are actually also your boundaries, right? That's why I said at the beginning of the model, what we do is, if are you seeing behavior in your child that you like? Good. Do say what you see in strengths so that their self-belief gets, affirmed in them and grounded in them. You seeing behavior you don't like? You say what you see, can do's. Say what you see again, strengths, right? So that and it's just that very simple. Do I like it? Do I not like it? And it seems so simple, but it's so profound. And it really is the foundation of holding boundaries. Because here's the really interesting thing. You are always right about what you like and what you dislike. And you're always right to like what you like and dislike what you dislike. I can't tell you that you love black licorice if you hate it. I can't tell you you're wrong to hate black licorice, or if your favorite color is blue, there's lots of blue in the background. I don't know if that's your favorite color, you're always right about what you like and what you dislike. Nobody can tell you that you're wrong about that. And that means your boundaries are always right. They're always right for you showing up as the most authentic version of yourself in the world. And it's so important to have that grounding.
Yeah.
You look like you want to say something.
No, that to me is mesmerizing, because that's something that I still struggle with, is thinking that my boundaries are okay. Because well, I'm working on it, but there's a lot of little things that bug me, and I'm just like, but I feel bad putting those boundaries up for other people, because I know that my little box of comfort is still like this big. So, but I can see how that has affected my own parenting, because my own not knowing what my boundaries are, or what I think they should be, then becomes me not knowing where to set their boundaries. Like, okay, is that allowed? I don't know. Because they ask me, well, can I do this? I struggle with knowing what's the right thing to do. And even what's really funny is, even when I think I know the right thing to do, and then I start thinking about what other people are going to think of me as a parent, if they knew that that's the way I wanted to parent. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, perfect. It becomes like a big deal. And I think that's a really good point. I just made a connection in my head. Look, me therapy myself. I think that's why COVID worked so well for me, because I didn't have to worry about what anybody else thought. We were here by ourselves, isolated from the rest of the world, and I could just be like myself, my own version of one.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents imagine people watching them in their home while they're parenting and judging them. And it's this idea of creating safety, right? It's that whole thing of, you don't want to get rejected from the tribe because you'll die. And that fear started in childhood. Yeah. That started in childhood. And so we did set our brains, we set the filter in our brains, because our brains are taking in tons of information at every moment. And then there's this filter in there that only sends certain pieces of information to the front, to our conscious thinking, right? And a lot of the times those thoughts are about keeping us safe. And so if you're afraid somebody's going to hate on you because of your parenting choices, you're not going to feel safe. And then you're not actually showing up as your real self in your parenting. You're showing up as a nervous, anxious version of yourself that's very protective. It's like being in fight or flight all the time. And that was one of my things. I was in fight or flight for most of my childhood, and that carried right into my parenting. And then you pass that on to your kids, right? You're in a state of fight or flight, their little bodies co-regulate and pick up on that. And we're passing on this fight or flight. And so being able to break that and having these tools, these 3 simple tools, and even this tool of writing out this list of likes and dislikes, it was one of the most powerful things for my marriage, because, and here's why it's not selfish. I love this piece. Once I was able to make my likes and dislikes the most important thing in my life, the thing that I set my brain filter to bring into my conscious thinking consistently, all of a sudden it made space for everybody else in the world, including my husband, made space for him to have his own likes and dislikes. And, a lot of times we bring enmeshment and codependency into marriages. I brought a truckload of enmeshment into my marriage. And it was just doing this list of likes and dislikes and realizing that I had mine and I was right about mine. And when I made space for mine, I could make space for everybody else's. And also, by the way, the people I love and care about are all on that list. So when I raise up my likes and dislikes to be the most important thing in my life, all the people come with it. All the people come with it. And all the other people come with it too, because they're all allowed to have their own likes and dislikes. And so with my husband, it really did break some enmeshment. He came home from work one day, and one of my survival mechanisms from childhood was to be very, very aware of microfacial expressions, because when my mom had a certain expression on her face, it could mean that I was going to get abused emotionally or physically. And so my brain got the filter. My brain was very aware and very sensitive to, microfacial expressions. And so my husband came home from work one day and he was upset about something that happened at work. And my little brain tells me, when you see that facial expression, this thing with the lips where the person's upset, You got to make it about you so that you have massive self-control so you don't get abused. So you put whatever that person wants as the first most important thing in your life so that you don't get abused. And I brought that into my marriage, and I found myself starting to pick a fight with him. I got really defensive because he was upset about it. I had something that had to do at work, something with work that had nothing to do with me, but my brain told me to make it about me. And so when I went, oh no, he just didn't like that. And his likes and dislikes have nothing to do with me. Nothing. They're just his. It's just who he is. My likes and dislikes have nothing to do with him. They're just me. It's just who I am. And so when I was able to go, oh, he's just upset about work, this has nothing to do with me. All of a sudden, these chains kind of fell off. Chains of enmeshment kind of fell off our relationship. And I wasn't picking that fight anymore. And I could just say what you see very freely and go, oh man, you hate it when that happens. And he was like, yeah, I do. And he felt seen and understood. And all of a sudden a relationship gets a lot closer because I have these just super simple tools. But again, Sandy's kind of figured out how human beings work. She did it again through this model of parenting. And then she was like, wait, this works with me. This works with everybody, you know?
Yeah. Wow. I could totally see that working too. And what you said about bringing in your own like enmeshment. Yeah, totally. I feel like you're in my head. I'm just kidding.
Well, I think we all have a lot of common experiences because we have been using this reward and punishment model for generations, you know, so we all have a lot of the same kind of survival techniques, these survival strategies to feel like we're safe in the world. And part of it is making decisions based on fear, but we lose each other, we lose ourselves, and we lose each other when that happens.
See, and I think a lot of the times there's very similar practices put into other parenting models, but people don't understand quite how to use them. So then it becomes very permissive parenting. Like,
Well, you got
oh,
it.
yeah. So you didn't like that. You don't have to, you know, like, no, your boundaries first, right? Like you still need to set up the
Yes.
structure of who you would like your children to grow up to be and kind of give them the guidance to do that in their own way.
Well, you're bringing out their strengths, right? Those
Right,
strengths are
right.
already in there. And so just showing them this is who you are.
Yeah.
This is who you're not a person who hits his brother. You're a person who can figure out how to solve a problem without anybody getting hurt.
So that, yeah, I'm going to start using this with my kids because I'm like, ooh, I can, well, for example, my youngest, she's just turned 6. She gets very emotional. Like, oh my gosh, like when thing goes wrong, her sock seam is on the wrong side of the foot, whatever.
Oh yeah, look out. Yep.
Yeah. The whole day is shot. Like,
Yep.
you know,
Been there.
right. And I think part of that is us going like, get over it. Like, it's fine. You're okay. Like, you know, I mean, not necessarily in those words, but kind of, because I'm just like, just put your shoes on. You gotta go. And so had I stopped to say like, hey, you know, I understand, go get another pair of socks, maybe it would have just been okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that I share with parents is that, you know, it's not what your kid's getting upset about. You know, so fine, they're screaming because they wanted the blue cup and they got the red cup and they're mad about that, right? But that little situation is the perfect opportunity for us as parents to teach our kids problem solving in a situation where they're experiencing disappointment. I think disappointment is knowing how to handle disappointment is one of the most important things that we can coach our kids through. And when they can handle, you know, it's okay that you didn't want the red cup. I can't remember which one I said they wanted now. I think I said they wanted the blue one. I think I got the red one instead, but it's okay. It's okay that you didn't want the red cup. It's okay that you want the blue cup, and you can't always have what you want. That's just a fact, you know? And then, but what can they do? You know, how can they problem solve? Do you need to know you're going to get the blue cup next time? Or what can they do to feel empowered instead of disempowered and wrong? You know, in language of listening, we're constantly just showing people, you're right, you're right, you're right. There's some level of rightness in what you're doing. You know, and then you go back to, did you like it? Did you dislike it? I mean, again, that's another one of the tools that or the mindsets that we get people to focus on is let's drop the word wrong for a little while. Let's just drop wrong. And when you're seeing something that you think is wrong, just stop and go, do I like it? Do I not like it? Because wrong needs proof from outside of yourself. You need other people to agree. You're always right about what you like and what you dislike. And so if somebody's doing something and you don't like it, and you can go, I don't like that. That's empowering. You're like, I don't like that. I can do something about that because I know I'm right about what I like and what I dislike. And I get to choose. You can't control other people, but you can choose what you're going to do around people who behave in ways that you don't like.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I have a question for you that may be out of scope, but what if, like for me, a lot of trauma, so I get very anxious and pissy about little tiny things that would not bother other people. And so the problem for me becomes that, like, I think it's unfair to set those boundaries because I'm like, don't do anything, like, you know? So what do you
Yeah.
do when you feel like your boundaries, even though you're justified in having them, like,
You feel like
I,
you're imposing on
yeah,
on
it's
your
almost like a
children.
Venn diagram and I'm giving them like this much space to move because my boundaries are like this big. And so even though they have this big giant person of who they are, they're only allowed to be this portion of it because my boundaries are so tiny. So what do you do when you feel like you're wrong? No, I'm just kidding.
But I love that question, Veronica, because it's so true for those of us that have childhood trauma. It's so true that like there's this very small space that we can function in sometimes, especially right now. There's so much anxiety in the world, right? And so if you already had anxiety before this thing started, you know, your anxiety might just be like completely through the roof right now. But the point is that it's perfectly fine to hold those boundaries, and it's easy. It's also perfectly fine to hold those little tight boundaries. And I do it with my kids all the time, but I make it about me. It's never about them. It's I feel like I'm going to go into fight or flight right now. My kids are very aware of, and my kids are 8 and 9 right now, and they're very aware of what it means. And they're very compassionate towards me. They know that I had kind of a rough childhood. And I just say, you know what, mommy's just feeling that she's going into fight or flight right now. And I just really need quiet. And then I let them know where they can go to make noise. You give them the can do's. We always keep them moving forward. Many times in parenting, we want to just stop a behavior. But see, stopping that tells the child you have to stop meeting your need. Needs got to get met. They just do. So we have this can do's tool instead where we say, well, here's where you can make noise, or here's when you can make noise if the noise can't be made right now. And so what I will do to my kids is I'll just be like, if you really need to make noise, you can do that outside, or you can do that in your bedroom with the door closed, you know, but it's me, I need the quiet. It's all about me. It's not that there's anything wrong with you. It's just, I need quiet right now, you know, and here's what you can do if you need to make noise, or you can be quiet. And, you know, those are the options. And so as long as you're making it about you, it's no problem. It's not putting any pressure or weight on them in that sense. You know,
Yeah,
it's about you. And they can be like, oh, this is how mom is.
right. That is very insightful and like mind blown. No,
And like,
because
so you see how it destroys enmeshment too?
it
Not,
does.
it's your fault. That was one of the big hurts from my childhood, is like, I feel like everything was my fault. It was all my fault, you know? And so I don't put that on my kids. It's your fault I'm going into fight or flight because you're making too much noise. No, I go into fight or flight sometimes and I really need quiet right now to stay calm. You can go make noise outside. So
Yeah.
enmeshment, not your fault. You know, my emotions are not tied up in your emotions. My emotions are mine. My likes and dislikes are mine. And here's how I'd like you to respect them.
Wow. Yeah, I could totally see that. Like, woo. I totally lost my train of thought. Trigger moment. I went into what? It's either for me. It's usually freeze or fawn, but
Yeah,
because
fight
I'll
or
just
fawn were my two big ones. Fight or fawn. Yeah. So you
yeah.
know all four. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Tricky.
usually it's fun when it's around other people, and freeze when I'm just like, I just lost what I was thinking because it obviously was going somewhere I didn't like. But no, that's super interesting because I think even in setting those boundaries, first of all, you're, like you said, getting rid of them thinking it's their fault, but you're also teaching them like, hey, it's okay to say, this is my boundary, and let other people still do their thing. So you're tackling it on both sides. It's fascinating.
Ah.
This should be taught like in college or like
Right.
as part of like Lamaze. Because
Yeah.
everybody knows, like, you know, you go to like the birthing classes. This should be like a thing because
Yes.
I think empowering parents in this way would be huge. So I hope everybody listens to this because at least I know it's going to make a huge difference in the way I parent. I think it's a great way to feel like not necessarily in control. You feel like
Capable.
capable. That's so,
Capable.
yeah, empowered and capable is how that makes me feel.
And
So
both
that,
parent and child can feel capable at the same time. You know, because here's our big issue is that the way that we hold boundaries, and this is how I came into parenting, I thought boundaries were mean and controlling. And so I
right.
turned into a mean and controlling person. I thought I had to be mean and controlling when a boundary had to be held. So I waited until I got really mad because I didn't know how to hold boundaries down here, loving, you know. And the thing that really came into my mind, the way to talk about it, because kids without boundaries really struggle too.
Mhm.
That can be very, very difficult and trying for kids without boundaries. They need to feel safe. And the way I talk about it with parents is I talk about swaddling babies. When I had my first, and you know, her arms were flailing all over, I had no idea how to swaddle her to begin with. And my brother-in-law, who had many kids and was a paramedic, he came right, oh, here's how you do it, Rose, and he just really fast. But when I was trying to do it, I was so ginger about it, doing it very gingerly, you know, and I was like trying to hold her arm down. I'm like, it's so mean. I'm holding her arm. I'm forcing her arm down, you know, and but like, it's so loving to swaddle a baby. And some
Mhm.
babies need it so bad. Like I talk about, like my youngest, I call her my swaddling child not because she had to be swaddled when she was a baby, but she needs to be swaddled in boundaries right now. She feels safe when I hold the boundaries firm, and she will push to understand them. She will push. So, they talk about kids testing boundaries, and then we say like, oh, it's a bad kid when they do that, or no, they just want to know. And when we're not able to be clear with kids or anybody about our boundaries, because we're not connected to what we like and what we dislike, we don't actually know what our boundaries are and if they're okay. You can't hold boundaries that way, not with adults, not with kids, And so this whole idea of like having boundaries is actually really loving, especially if you see it that way. Again, I thought boundaries were mean and controlling, and I turned into a mean, yelling, controlling mother when I had to hold boundaries, because it's just what my brain understood. And since then, I've been able to create new mental pathways where I'm like, oh no, I'm just helping you be successful at life. I'm helping you build mental pathways. You're not a kid who hits. You're a kid who can problem solve with their sister and figure stuff out. And that means you're going to be able to problem solve in the schoolyard. And that means you're going to be able to problem solve at work and in your marriage and, all those things. And it's creating tools for them. And again, those strengths, that self-belief that's where they're drawing from when they're making not, oh my gosh, it's going to be my fault. I have to lie and say I'm not the one that, stepped on the whatever and broke it, or I'm not the one that broke the vase, or, like there's that fear that comes up, right? A child who can just not function out of fear is like, that's real self-confidence to me. That's real self-confidence.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you can see that, especially like in toddlers, because they haven't gotten the whole I'm wrong yet, because they're very, they're right about everything.
They're meeting their needs. Yeah,
exactly. And they know, and they finally got to a place where they can say it and mean it and go, be king or queen of the world. And so if you take that confidence with a little bit of self-control without like squashing their little spirit, I think this is the way to do it. Because I always, like, my oldest she is very passionate about things and also assertive. And it was really hard for me not to be like, you're being aggressive, because usually for girls, that's the thing. Like, it's assertive is seen very negatively when it comes from a girl. And so it's been very difficult for me to be like, okay, you are who you are, and I'm proud of you for it. To know that you can let your kids be themselves and not have to worry about them. Like you said, you see them in the future, like, oh my God, you're going to live under a bridge like a drug addict. Like, like you're never going to hold a real job. Well, maybe they weren't meant to hold a 9-to-5 job. Maybe they're meant to be a creative person. You don't know.
Yes. Yeah. And when they have self-belief, they can go after those things.
Right.
They can experience success over and over again. And whether it's, teaching them how to zip their zipper or acing a test at school, they can experience success. Yeah.
I wish I could go back in time and reparent my kids. Is it too late? Did I screw them all up?
It's absolutely not too late. It's absolutely not too late. No, because we have plastic brains, right? Like this is what the model did for me. It allowed me to reparent myself in my 40s. I'm 44. And I was able to reparent myself. I went into learning the model and I went into the coaches program in order to become the kind of mom I wanted to be. I could see, from reading Sandy's website, like, oh, this is all about being emotionally available and having boundaries, because you have to be the one in charge. You just do. Like if you're a parent, you got to be making a lot of the decisions. It provides safety for the child. It's so important, And I was like, it's got both. It's got both of what I wanted, because my parents were, they were great at getting what they wanted and making everybody do what they wanted, but I didn't want it that way. I wanted the emotions to be available,
right.
For my kids. So yeah.
I think that's super interesting, because that was the thing that I've always struggled with myself, because and that's why I think I had to hold on to the control. And I hope the listeners can resonate with this, because it was very much like, if I don't have control, I'm not going to be a good mom, because I don't know how to do it. So I just have to like fix everything for everybody. Nobody move. You're all clean right now. Just stay right there. Don't get hurt.
You're creating safety, right? And we all need to do that. We all need to do that. And then you go back to your likes and dislikes. Do I like the ways that I'm creating safety? Do I like them?
And I think
trust that.
I started when you were talking about how to go over your likes and dislikes, and I was saying that like my likes are like a little tiny circle. And one of the things that I remembered, or that kind of just came forward in my mind, was that sometimes your likes and dislikes aren't necessarily about the thing that you're liking or disliking. So I think getting to the root of that can be huge. Like you said, you're in fight or flight for a reason. So for example, my kids like to like play fight a little bit, my two younger ones. And one time I knew that I was wrong for feeling this way, because they were being totally fine. They weren't being super loud. They were just kind of wrestling on the couch, but it was bugging me. And so going back to that moment, like it would have been much better for all of us to be like, hey, by the way, this is making me tense. Can you go do it in the other room? And then they would have still had fun, and I wouldn't have been like freaking out that I was going to freak out on them, because I didn't want to yell at them. I wanted them to have those moments. They were bonding, but at the same time, yeah. So
Well,
that's
can we go back, Veronica, though, and make you right?
Yes.
And make
absolutely.
you right for going into fight or flight with your kids wrestling on the couch? You know, what were you afraid would happen?
It was probably manyfold, but it's at least twofold. I was afraid that they were going to get hurt, but also my son is 12. His younger sister is only 6. So there's quite a disparity there. I was afraid that somebody was going to get hurt. And actually, usually it's him, because he can control his strength, and she just like charges him full board because he's bigger than her, you know? There's that component. And then just the noise of them fighting was kind of, you know, triggering a bunch of other stuff. But that's totally different. So I knew that that was what was bugging me.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, right? Like, a good mom doesn't want her kids to get hurt. Right. Of course you don't want your kids. That's really good. That's really important. You can trust that part of yourself that doesn't want your kids to get hurt. And also, you know your kids really well. You know your 12-year-old has self-control and knows what he's doing, right? And the 6-year-old just goes nuts, right? And she doesn't have that self-control. She doesn't have that knowledge yet. So you know your kids really, really well. You see how I'm pointing out your strengths? I'm making you right. These are your strengths, right? You can trust those pieces. And when you know you can trust them and you're aware of them, your mind is just so much clearer to make a clear decision about it, right? Even the fact that you don't like the noise, you don't like it. You don't like the noise, and you don't have to like it. And you can ask them to go somewhere else, and you can do it in a super calm and loving way, because you know you're right about what you like and what you dislike. Isn't that beautiful?
It's like a therapy moment. Right? People who are listening to the podcast can't see my face being all like, well, you can't see it either because I look like a vampire here, but like I'm all like flesh red. And yeah, that was really interesting, because that made a huge difference in how I saw that whole situation. So I could see how that would work for kids, because
you're going to talk to them completely differently. You're going to express your boundaries in a completely different way when you trust yourself and you trust that you're right about what you like and what you dislike. And it's not a big deal. You don't have to get all mean and controlling like I did, right? Like I thought I had to be angry first, and I let myself get angry and yell, and I didn't like it. And so I worked at changing it. Yeah. And that just trusting that you don't like it. I mean, the yelling, we could talk about yelling for a quick minute too. You know, the yelling, a lot of moms will have a lot of mom guilt about yelling, because they think it proves that they're a bad mom. Like, the yelling it's not who you are. It's the fact that you don't like the yelling. That's who you are. And you can trust what you like and what you dislike, and you can go after those things. And there are fantastic ways. Language of listening got me to stop yelling fairly quickly by making myself right. Yes, I'm mad. Yes, I'm upset, you know? And actually, when you get mad, there's hormones that are released into your system, and there's an energy, you know, your body's getting ready to fight or run. And so there's an energy in there that has to be released. And so there's a blog post on Sandy's website where she talks about exaggerate your anger. Go, like, you know, start swinging your arms and stomping your feet. That moves the energy out of your body, and you can raise your voice, but you turn it into a game, and you go, oh no, look out. Here comes angry mom. Angry mommy's coming, you know, and that allows you to get, again, to move that energy out. And then the kids start laughing because you're not yelling at them. You're not blaming them. You're actually making it about you. Right. And so I did this. I started doing this with my kids. I started pretending to be angry mommy. The angry mommy's coming, and they'd start giggling. And there were a couple times, Veronica, where I forgot because I was so mad. I just forgot to exaggerate, and they laughed anyway, which made me laugh and go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be pretending to be angry mommy right now. And it got me to stop yelling. And it got me to be able to, you know, get to a place where I just didn't need to yell anymore, and I could hold my boundaries. It carried me through till all the likes and dislikes soaked in, and, you know, learning that boundaries are loving and caring and all those things, you know. And it was great. It was a great way to stop. Because again, you're right. I mean, the hormones are there. It's got to be released. It's okay. And we work with it. We work with moms exactly, you know, where they are, exactly from where they are. Even after a very traumatic childhood, that's where I was, you know.
I feel like you're reparenting me right now. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know,
exactly.
All the connections going off in my brain are huge, because when you were talking about being angry mommy and yelling and exaggerating that, I kind of pictured a kid doing it. And that's exactly what the yelling, at least for me, is. It's I'm not being heard. Nobody listens to me unless I yell.
Exactly. You got it. Yeah, you need to be seen and heard and understood too. You do. And that's why the tools work with you. You can take the tools and go in the bathroom and close the door That's the other thing. If you can stop yourself from yelling, get into the bathroom, look in the mirror and say what you see for you and speak to yourself in the second person. You're so mad right now. You want to yell, you want to scream and yell and throw things, that's what you want to do. You're so mad, but you don't like it when you do those things, and you self-coach, you use the tools to self-coach, and then you can go into strengths, go into what you want. You go into strengths. What do your wants show? What are you right about? Just like I did with you, with the kids on the couch. You don't want them wrestling right now because you don't want anybody to get hurt. Those real strengths in there. And then when you know that it's okay to want what you want, then you move into can-dos for yourself. What can I do to hold my boundary right now? And one of my boundaries is not to yell at my kids, and the other one is for not for them to whatever they were doing that made you feel like yelling, and then you're calm and you're right, and you can come at it from a very, this is just how things are, just not an upset place.
Yeah, that's amazing. See, this is why podcasts are awesome, because I get to learn all kinds of new things, and it's almost like free therapy. Because I'm like,
right?
Well, because you get so many fascinating viewpoints from people who really know what they're talking about because they're passionate about it. So it's like learning from the best. That's what this whole podcast is about, because I feel like there's so many pieces of knowledge that people need to hear and don't know where to look for it, and don't have the time to do, years and years of research and go to 2 years of coaching. But for now, we got like your knowledge that just blew my mind and totally expanded my world. And so I hope it did that for our listeners too. And
yeah.
So before we wrap up, why don't you tell us where people can find you and learn more about you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm most active in my Facebook group. It's called Love the Way You Parent. This is the name of my business. And the reason why I call my business Love the Way You Parent is because my goal is to get people to a place where they feel free to choose. Because when you feel free to choose, you're always going to choose what you like and what you love. And so when you're feeling free to choose in your parenting, you're going to get to a place where you love the way you parent. So that's the name of my group. I have a business Facebook page, not super active on there. So I just really recommend, if people search me on Facebook, search Love the Way You Parent on Facebook, join the group, And then also I do have a 12-week program, and there are 3 ways to access my intensive. I'm very highly involved in it. So I have a one-to-one where I work one-to-one with people to teach them the art of the language of listening tools. And, a lot of those tools are learning how to coach your kids, but also learning how to coach yourself as well, and getting to the place where boundaries feel easy. They feel easy and natural instead of really difficult. And, we get your kids listening without any yelling, threats, or punishment. So one-to-one, I work with people. I even have started working with couples now, because invariably, when you're parenting with somebody else, that relationship definitely gets into the equation as well. And so I work with couples. And then I also have a group program that I've opened up as well. So sometimes having community, working with other people that are wanting to parent their kids in the same ways that you are, it can really be fantastic to learn from other people's experiences and have other people cheering you on. There's something about language of listening that once you use the tools and people are using the tools with you, you kind of want more of that,
Right.
You want more of that. And so that community aspect is really fantastic as well. And so people can check out my program on my website, afteraces.com, afteraces.com/love the way you parent.
Yeah. So I'm going to put all of that in the show notes, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that need to hear what you have to say, because I've seen other parents, but you're absolutely right about the group. I think it's a great way to feel validated, whether it be the Facebook group or your group coaching. I think just being heard as a parent and knowing that you're not wrong, and having other parents tell you you're not wrong. I don't know about you, but every time like a mom and I agree on something, I'm like, oh God, it's not just me. Like, if it could feel that way. Yeah.
We need that. Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that's extremely valuable for everybody. But I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I learned so much, and I feel like it really is going to change my life. So I really appreciate you and your time and your skill and your passion in what you do. So thank you very much. And I'll wrap up right after this. So I got so much value from that interview. I can't even begin to tell you how much Rosemary has changed not only how I view boundaries as a whole, but how I'm going to relate that to my children and my business relationships. I would love it if you share this episode with anyone else you think might benefit from it. All righty, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you next time on the Biz Essentials.
You've been listening to the Biz Essentials. Thanks for listening to the show. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information, learning how to be productive, be successful, be joyful, and more importantly, Be yourself and turning your dreams into successful passion projects. By listening to this show, you've already set into motion the most important part, starting. So it's important to catch the next episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. In the meantime, hook up with us on social media at Veronica Ventures and at the Biz Essentials. Till next time, this is the Biz Essentials.
Today's quote of the day is by Brené Brown. Daring to set boundaries is about loving ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. Isn't that a powerful thought? Set those boundaries and let me know how it works for you. Anyway, guys, hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time on the Biz Essentials. Bye.